Our job today is pretty simple. Our job today is to get a basic understanding of a lot of very specific congressional vocabulary terms, and this will help us be able to explain all sorts of more complicated processes later on. Today, we're going to define vocabulary terms that deal with different legislation issues, and this way we'll be able to effectively discuss Congress. We'll be able to understand kind of terms that we use only when we're talking about Congress and don't really work with anything else. Here's a picture of the mostly empty Senate floor. We'll be discussing all sorts of different descriptions of vocabulary terms to help us explain how Congress operates, and some particularly for the Senate. So first up is a term. Now we've used term a little bit before to describe how long a congressman serves, but when we talk about a term of Congress, we're talking about the 2-year period between elections. So in any 2-year period between elections, the 535 members of Congress are usually the same. And we call this Congress in the order in which it has come. So like right now we are in the middle of the 116th Congress, or I guess we're almost at the end of the 116th Congress. And after the 2020 elections, the beginning of January, we will start the 117th Congress. So each term lasts 2 years long, and it is the period where all of the elected members of Congress are the same. Inside of the 2-year term, we might have sessions. And a session of Congress is a time period where Congress is actually meeting and conducting business. When we have a session of Congress, this just means that congressmen are actually like in the chambers and they're discussing issues, they're debating, they're voting, they're maybe even writing laws, but this means they're in Washington, D.C. instead of back home in their constituencies. The Constitution prevents Congress from meeting in any other place other than the U.S. Capitol building. So that's a little bit of what went into what went into the difficulties with doing Congress remotely for during the coronavirus pandemic. But they are banned from meeting any other place besides the U.S. Capitol. That way, we can always be there to see what's going on. And each house can have a session without the other house. They don't have to have sessions at the same time, but no house can adjourn without the permission of the other house for long term. Another term we'll use, we've already used it a lot, but just to get a clear definition, we have the term constituency. And constituency means this is the area and the people that a congressman represents. So a constituency can refer to a place, it can refer to a group of people, and we refer to people that are represented by the congressman as constituents. So I am a constituent of a particular congressman. All right, in addition to a session of Congress, when Congress is in session, we might have joint sessions. When we have joint sessions, this means that the members of the House and the Senate meet together. So all of the members of the Senate and the House will get together. And this is usually for very special occasions, like we'll see this during the State of the Union address. There will be a joint session of Congress. But sometimes in emergencies, we have like a joint session to declare war or something like that. So it's pretty rare, but for like ceremonial stuff, the House and the Senate might meet together. All right, here's a weird parliamentary vocabulary term here. This is a quorum. And a quorum just means more than half. We need a majority. So for voting to take place in the House or the Senate, a majority of the the chamber's members have to be present. So that's more than half of the representatives or more than half of the senators actually have to be there in the room in order for voting to take place. You'll often see congressmen making speeches and things like that in chambers. And they're often speaking to an empty room. That is true a lot of the day. The House of Representatives and Senate might both be mostly empty, except for a couple of congressmen making speeches about issues important to their constituents back home. But if there's going to be voting taking place, then a quorum is necessary, meaning more than half of the members must be present. And this is not the most important term in the world, but a quorum call, this is kind of an announcement that goes out to tell members to report to the chamber in order to get a quorum. So if it's time to vote on something, they'll make a quorum call, and that gives the representatives and senators time to get from their offices to the House or Senate chambers. All right, now to talk about the members of Congress for just a minute, I want to make sure you guys are familiar with the term rank and file. We'll describe a lot of congressmen as rank and file congressmen, and that just means they're not very exciting. That means they are regular voting members. That means they are not a member of party leadership. They're not a member of committee leadership. They're just a regular voter. So this is the vast majority of our congressmen are what we call rank and file congressmen, but this just means they are not a part of party leadership. Most likely, it's true that these congressmen would be newer or unproven, but they hope to one day be in party leadership. I'm going to switch up and talk about some lawmaking vocabulary for a few minutes here. First of all, make sure we understand the term bill. And a bill is just a proposed law. So it is a plan that has a potential to become law if it is passed through the Congress. A resolution is similar, but a resolution doesn't have any force of law. A resolution is something that would go through the same process as a bill, but is really then just an expression of opinion for the House or the Senate. So like the House or Senate, for example, the House of Representatives issued a resolution apologizing for slavery. So they drew up an apology. They agreed to the language of the apology. They voted on the apology. And so the House of Representatives has apologized for the United States having slavery. But when we say it doesn't carry the force of law, that's what happens with this apology. It didn't do anything. It's basically like Congress having an opportunity to make an official statement. So they could pass a resolution saying that something another country did was bad, or we could pass a resolution honoring someone who passed away or something like that. But it's just a statement of opinion from the House or the Senate that is voted on. So you know the term joint session. A joint resolution is kind of has the same meaning here. A joint resolution is passed by both houses. That means the House and the Senate agree on a joint resolution, and then the president would also agree to this. So joint resolutions might be a resolution to declare war, might be a resolution to set up a temporary investigative group like the 9/11 Commission, a joint resolution to investigate the 2016 election. And if they're going to propose an amendment to the Constitution, that also takes the form of a joint resolution. All right, here's a term that we are not going to use hardly at all, but this is just a weird thing they throw in the curriculum and does pop up on the AP test. This is called a discharge petition. A discharge petition is a complicated part of lawmaking. So when a bill is in committee and maybe the committee chairman does not want the bill to get out on the floor for voting, the committee chairman refuses to send the bill out, then any House member can force a bill onto the floor to be voted on if it's been stuck in the committee for 30 days. So what you need to understand here is that this is a check that a rank and file member of Congress has on party leadership. So this is pretty rare that they have any power like this, but a rank and file member, a regular member of the House, can issue a discharge petition, and that forces a vote on a bill if it's been stuck inside the committee or kind of held hostage by the committee leadership. All right, here's a couple terms that are very important. We will be using these a lot. This is rider and pork barrel. A rider, these are similar concepts here. A rider is an unrelated provision that's added to a bill to get more support. So you can add unrelated things to a bill, and that might be enough just to get one extra person's vote. And so this is how a lot of those projects for their home districts get passed. But even if it's a bill about, it could be a bill totally unrelated. So a bill about education in all 50 states, a congressman might not support it. But if they add a rider to build a new statue in another congressman's district, then that's the kind of thing that they might switch their vote for. and it's completely unrelated, but it gets like tagged into the language of the bill, and it is able to attract more votes for the process that way. Now, many riders take the form of what we call pork barrel projects. So this is where a congressman has gotten added into a law or passed regular like a bill, some project that will create a benefit specifically for their district. So these take the form of all sorts of things like libraries and bridges and all sorts of stuff like that. It just means that the national government is completing a project that is going to specifically provide benefits for one congressman's constituency. So examples in Memphis, we've mentioned already. Steve Cohen got a pork barrel project of his would be that the U.S. Congress repaired all the trolleys over the last couple of years. And then a second one would be that he got U.S. Congress to fund the Big River Crossing Bridge, our pedestrian bridge over the Mississippi River. That bridge and those trolleys do not provide benefits to people of other districts. They don't help the country at all, but they do make Congressman Cohen very popular in his district since he gets the big national government to pay for projects that benefit us locally. All right, we will get into rules in detail later, but it is important that you know the difference between an open rule and a closed rule. So this is a complicated part of the lawmaking process, but an open rule means that any member of the House can add amendments to the bill. So when they're debating and getting ready to vote on a bill, if the bill has been labeled open rule, that means any of the 435 House members can add things to the bill. And so that creates a lot of potential for the bill to get really messed up if you've got 435 people adding their thoughts to it. A closed rule is the opposite. This prevents bills from being changed once they are on the floor for voting. So we'll talk about the House Rules Committee who makes these decisions and why they might do that. But it is important that you understand the difference between the open rule and the closed rule. All right, quickly, different ways that they vote. We have a voice vote, and this is literally like the speaker of the House or the Senate Majority Leader might ask a question, and you have hundreds of people just saying yay or nay. So this is a quick and anonymous way to vote on bills. And if it is going to like obviously pass, they'll just say, what do we think about this bill? And the majority of the room screams yay, and it's easy to tell that that is a majority of the congressmen, so they move on. It's very quick, and it also provides the congressman the benefit of being anonymous. A division vote, similar, they might stand and are counted, and so this is a little less anonymous, but this one doesn't happen as often. The other thing besides a voice vote that we will see a lot is called a roll call vote. And this, the Speaker of the House or the Senate Majority Leader literally goes down the list, says the congressman's name, and they say yay or nay. And this way, it's not anonymous. We can track each person's vote, and we know how each person voted on an issue. And then sometimes, finally, a more modern way of doing things, we do have electronic votes. And so there is a button at their desk which they can push and vote that way. Now, they don't use this all the time. A lot of time they like to make a show of either a voice vote or a roll call vote. But this is a very easy and quick way for everyone to vote. All right, there's a few different types of spending bills, and we will deal with these in detail later, but it's important that you know these terms. An authorization bill gives a program or gives an office, an agency, it gives them a goal. It tells them to begin to do something, and this means that money has been authorized to spend on the project. So this is where the government says, go ahead and do something, and it instructs that program or agency that they will get money for it. An authorization bill must be followed by an appropriations bill for this to go through. So the appropriations bill is what actually spends the money. it distributes the money to the project. So the appropriations bill, this is a big budget power of Congress. And so the authorization bill tells an agency do something, and the appropriations bill gives them the money to do it. Sometimes we get into fights about spending the money. And some of those, in those cases, we will deal with shutdowns and stuff. But some of the things the government does are incredibly important, whether the budget has been agreed to or not. And so a continuing resolution can be passed, and this tells agencies or programs to continue doing whatever they were doing as if they had the money, even if they don't have the money. So this is saying that they will be paid back for whatever they're doing, so they should go ahead and continue working even if they don't have the money. So continuing resolutions allow things like the mail to continue functioning even when the government is fighting about the budget. Another term that will just be specific to Congress would be an omnibus bill. And this is where they're going to take a bunch of small bills together and vote on them all at once. So this is usually done with appropriations bills. You could take a whole lot of appropriations bills, vote on them all together as a time saver, and this prevents debate on each tiny little detail of every single bill. So this is a way that Congress can speed up the process of paying for things. And we'll get into this last thing a lot more when we deal with the budget, but a government shutdown, this occurs when Congress and the executive branch cannot agree on the budget. And so when Congress refuses to fund the government, when Congress refuses to pass a budget that the president will agree to, then there is no funding for the executive branch. And so those bureaucratic offices, the agencies and programs run by the bureaucracy, don't have the money to continue functioning, and so parts of the government will close. We might notice those things as government offices closing, or national parks closing, or different services like that. But a government shutdown occurs when the Congress and the president cannot agree to the budget. And our final vocabulary terms are specific to the Senate. We will talk about these in great detail, but we have a filibuster. And a filibuster, in the Senate, there are not limits on how long debate can take. So a single senator can take advantage of this fact, and they can talk for hours and hours and hours. And this is called a filibuster. And what they're trying to do, we might say they're trying to talk a bill to death, because they're just going to get the floor, and they're going to start speaking, and they're going to speak for as long as they can. And what they're hoping, as long as they're speaking, they are preventing vote on a bill, but they are hoping that the other congressmen, the other senators in the room will realize that they will talk as long as it takes, and that people will give up on the bill and change their mind. If people if they give up, then the bill dies. And so this gives a single senator a tremendous amount of power to kill a bill that they disagree with. So in order to stop a filibuster, our option is called cloture. And this is a vote that cuts off debate on the Senate floor and forces a vote. But the only way for cloture to occur is it requires 60 people to agree. So 60 people must agree to end the filibuster. And this is pretty rare, that there are 60 members of either party in the Senate, and so it takes agreement from Republicans and Democrats to get someone to end a filibuster. And so because of increased use of the filibuster, this has made it so that in the Senate, basically all bills require the support of 60 senators in order to pass. All right, so nothing fancy there today. This is just a list of vocabulary words, but these are terms that we need to know. These are in our curriculum, and these do occasionally pop up on the AP test, so we need to make sure we understand these different terms and we can use these terms. You'll want to make sure that you can define all of these terms related to lawmaking. It's really important that you can tell that you know the difference between the different types of bills. So between a bill and a resolution, between an authorization bill and an appropriations bill, between open rule and closed rule bills. Those are all things that we're going to be asked from time to time. And it's also really important that you're able to describe the purpose of the filibuster and the purpose of cloture. We'll get into the impacts that filibuster and cloture have on lawmaking in the Senate later. But we'll move on and start exploring different aspects of the lawmaking process and congressional leadership.